may end up entrenching rather than undermining existing norms. What is needed is some kind of movement, initiated by people who say they disapprove of the norm, and succeeding when some kind of tipping point is reached, by which time it is socially costless and maybe beneficial, and maybe even mandatory to say, "Me too." That's a stylized version of what has happened with respect to sexual orientation in many nations. But the same dynamics help capture a host of social movements, including those that involve Catholicism, the French Revolution, the creation of Israel, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the collapse of the Soviet Union, disability discrimination, age discrimination, animal rights, the rise of Barack Obama and Donald Trump, Brexit, nationalism, white supremacy, and the abolition of slavery. These movements are, of course, different in important ways. Some of them are unambiguously good, while others are harder to evaluate, and still others are deeply troubling. But in all of them, suppressed beliefs and values, including suppressed outrage, started to get some oxygen. Once they did, change was inevitable. It was also hard or perhaps impossible to anticipate those social movements. A central reason is that because people falsified their preferences, individuals did not know what their fellow citizens actually thought. In the face of preference falsification, the circumstances are right for unleashing social change. But because preferences are falsified, few people may be aware of that fact. Another reason for the unpredictability is the overriding importance of social interactions. For change to occur, interactions need to produce, at just the right times and places, a growing sense that an existing norm is vulnerable, and that may or may not happen. Serendipity might be crucial. Who talks to whom at the right point? What is covered in the right newspaper? Who retweets what, and exactly when? Science fiction writers like to explore counterfactual history, historical arcs in which the South won the Civil War, Hitler devoted his entire life to painting, John F. Kennedy wasn't assassinated, or Donald Trump decided to ramp up his real estate activities rather than to run for president. At their most intriguing, counterfactual histories emphasize small shifts or nudges that produced massive changes. They make it plausible to think that with a little push or pull, whole nations might have ended up looking radically different. Because history is only run once, we can't know when that's true. But we do observe large shifts in short time frames. If we have a sense of the mechanisms that account for those shifts, we might be newly aware of the extent to which things we now take for granted were not exactly predestined, and of how, with a little pressure at the right time, the coming decades might take startlingly different courses. I know that these claims raise many questions. I will explore them in due course. This book consists of 16 chapters. While they do not make for a unitary narrative, they are connected by an effort to connect findings in behavioral science with enduring issues in law and policy, and by an effort to show how seemingly small perturbations can often produce big shifts. The first 3 chapters explore the power of social norms, the importance of social cascades, the phenomenon of group polarization, and the expressive function of law. I emphasize that in many cases people are unleashed for better or for worse, and that in other cases something very different happens.